The Auburn Tigers looking for their third season sweep this year in SEC play, this time against the Crimson Tide. Let's talk about it right here inside the town.
The Auburn Express. You are now listening to the War Rapport Longtown Podcast. With your boy, Ike Jones.
Welcome in, everybody. Lobtown, part of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. Today, brought to you by the good folks over at BetUS. When you use code YouTube150, you can get up to 150% match on your deposit, your first deposit, 125% on the second and third deposits there at betus.com, where the game begins. Make sure you tap in with those good folks over there. If you are trying to do a little wager on the games coming up, we're getting into March Madness, so definitely want to make sure that you guys are locked in over there. Also, make sure that you are locking in with us. Share this content with somebody. We definitely appreciate that. Let's get to talking about this game. Auburn versus Alabama, the rematch set to go down inside of Neville Arena on Saturday afternoon. And Auburn, again, looking for that third sweep in SEC season, already taking care of Georgia and Ole Miss for the sweep, looking for the third one there against Bama. You know, both teams really don't have much to gain from this game. This is 100% a pride situation because they're not going to make too much movement at this point in time in where they are in postseason lines, right? Like, Bama right now is on the 2 line. I guess a win versus Auburn could potentially get them closer into that conversation of a 1 line, but I don't see it happening very much. I think that when you look at the other teams that are there on the 1 line with Auburn, because Auburn is locked up a 1 seed, it's about whether or not they have the number 1 or number 2 overall. It's between Auburn and Duke at this point in time. Some folks say that Auburn can't do anything to jump off of that 2 line with Duke being the other guy at the team. I don't know if I still believe that, but maybe that's one thing that Auburn has to play for. And then Janai Broome trying to get National Player of the Year recognition. That's definitely still on the table for him. So really maybe a little bit of stakes there. But in terms of Alabama, they're pretty much a 2 seed at this point in time. Not much that they can do to surpass the other 2 teams that are there looking at a 2 seed, being Houston and probably Florida as the other 2 seed. And I do think that they still have an uphill climb to try to get in front of Tennessee, even for that other 1 seed, if it were to happen. So I don't think that there's much that Alabama could gain from this other than the pride of not wanting to get swept. And their team has a tremendous amount of pride. So they are going to come out here and they are going to play. So it's not as if they're going to just mail in this game. But again, there's not a lot that they could do from the NCAA or SEC tournament as far as seeding is concerned with this win. So at this point in time, it's for pride, and there's a lot of pride in this matchup. I talked about this in the first matchup. It is the preeminent basketball matchup right now, just because there's not as much as from a both teams being good standpoint in that rivalry up in North Carolina, even though that's going to be going down as well. So we'll see what happens with that, but a lot of pride on the line between these 2 teams. And you're looking at 2 teams both trying to bounce back from losses. Bama losing at home versus Florida most recently, and Auburn losing on the road, their 3rd loss of the season versus Texas A&M. So both teams looking to bounce back from losses. In fact, Bama is a team that has lost a few games recently. When you look at their SEC season most recently, they're 12-5 on the SEC season, but they have lost of their last 6 matchups, 4 of those. So 4 of their last 6 have been L's, starting with Auburn in that game in Coleman, but then they lost on the road versus Missouri. They got a couple of wins versus Kentucky and Mississippi State, both of those pretty strong wins, both double-digit wins, but then losing another 2 games back-to-back, Tennessee and Florida. So what Auburn is up against is a team in Bama who has not lost 3 in a row all season. So they're trying to be the first team to give them a 3rd loss in a row. And Bama trying to give Auburn 2 losses in a row, something they have not done the entirety of this season, is back-to-back losses. So the status of Denver Jones is going to be a big thing that plays into this. Denver Jones, of course, missed that Texas A&M after the injury he suffered in the Kentucky game. And you've gotten a lot more minutes from Tahad Pettiford in this one. You got those point guard minutes from Chad Baker-Mazara that he was able to get for the first time in that Texas A&M game. And it's going to be interesting to see again how the Denver Jones injury plays into this, whether or not Denver Jones is going to be available. And if he is playing, how many minutes he's going to be available to play. Him being a game time decision for the Texas A&M game and having an additional couple of days since he didn't play in that Texas A&M game gives you more confidence that he's going to be available and ready to play. The question is, does he start? And if he does start, how many minutes? If he doesn't start, how many minutes does he play? How healthy is that ankle? And where it's a lower leg injury. I don't know that it's actually an ankle, but still lower leg injury with the soft tissue bruise that he has there. How is he able to do on that? Coach Bruce Pearl during his press conference said they'd know more after he practiced. So still no reports specifically about that, but the SEC availability report isn't due just yet. So we'll know more about the Denver Jones injury coming up here soon. But as of right now, that's the only major concern for Auburn. Janai Broome had the shoulder situation flare up for him during that Texas A&M game, but I do expect him to be able to play. It is his left shoulder this time, as opposed to last time it was being his right shoulder. So that is a bit more concerning for Auburn because it is his shooting arm this time that he had the situation with. So I do expect Janai to come out there probably with some sort of shoulder harness on. And how is that going to impact a guy who actually has been struggling really the last few games with his ability to finish in the lane? And then, just his, point production. Coach Pearl talked about this. I think it's a little bit misleading when you look at the way that teams are playing him. He being a person that doesn't get the ball away from the basket and able to face up and do a lot of things. He's a back to the basket type of player. So he gets a lot of his stuff off of the activity from the offense, as well as his ability to go into the post and get one-on-one matchups. Teams have refused to play him one-on-one for the most part, right? Kentucky did because they had the size to be able to do that. But even with that, they were sending a second body to him pretty frequently. So a lot of what he was having to do versus Kentucky up until the second half of that game was going against either a lot of size and really kind of quasi zone looks, or they were going against quick double teams to get the ball out of his hands. And you had better shooting performances from your guards, particularly Miles Kelly in that Kentucky game, to cushion the fact that you weren't getting the consistent double-double that you had been getting from Janai Broome in his previous games. And in the Texas A&M game, they played almost exclusively zone or double teaming Janai the minute that he got the ball. So he didn't have a lot of opportunities at the basket to be able to, and he was rushing shots because he knew that double team was coming pretty quickly. So against Alabama, going to be interesting to see how they're able to combat that versus them to get Janai Broome more involved, and whether or not he's going to get the opportunity to really even get the catches in the post, and then be able to be a higher assist performer, because the double team is absolutely going to be coming in that game as well. For me, the points aren't the biggest deal. It's the rebounding and the assist numbers that you hope to see better from Janai Broome. The gravity that he creates for teams with the way that they try to take him out of games means that he needs to be able to contribute in other ways, off the ball or with the ball in his hands, being able to find other players. Those are the things that Janai Broome had been doing a good job of impacting games. And then he's able to get additional points. He's able to score off of rebounds and second chance opportunities. He's able to score a little bit more in transition as they're securing rebounds and getting out there into the open floor. He's able to score and get more opportunities for other people when he's in the half court game, and his assist numbers had been better. And those are the things that I think I'd like to see more from Janai Broome. The scoring, not as concerned about that. Maybe he can step out and shoot a couple. He hadn't really shot the three ball particularly well in these last two. He hadn't shot the ball well at all, really, in the last two games. But he hadn't shot any threes in these last games as well. And that's something, again, when he steps away from the basket, that's an element he had added to his game that you hadn't seen in these last couple. And those are the things that when they're double teaming him in the post, he needs to be able to do to get himself going and also make himself a threat against these teams that are consistently trying to take him away from the game plan. So it's going to be interesting to see how Alabama decides to do that. I don't know that Bama has the interior post presence to be able to keep him away as a single covered person. So they're going to probably double him a little bit more than what Kentucky did, and maybe even try to play a little bit more zone like what Texas A&M did in order to try to keep him out of the game. But in terms of kind of the matchups here and what they're doing, there's players that need to be able to step up. Again, we talked about the potential absence of Denver Jones, and how Tahad Pettiford had played well in his absence offensively. But he had a few too many turnovers in this last game. The offense wasn't as fluid with him in there, though he's getting his. It didn't seem like others were getting involved as well. And credit to Texas A&M for the type of defense that they play and the style that they play against what is, a lot of motion offense for Coach Pearl and his staff. A lot of that doesn't work so well when you're playing a lot of what the zone or even the switching man concepts that Texas A&M plays. A lot of that off ball motion doesn't work as well against that. So you have to be really crisp in your passing and execution. Auburn just wasn't that for portions of that game versus Texas A&M. So going to be interesting to see who steps up. And, I'm looking at guys like Chaney Johnson, who really didn't have a good game on the boards or scoring wise versus Texas A&M, that need to step up and be able to play better games. Dylan Cardwell didn't have a good game on the boards, needs to be able to do that better in this game in order for Auburn to be successful. So looking for those guys to step up. So if you're looking at some of those matchups and you're saying, hey, well, how are these guys going to perform? The best way for you to be able to look at some of those things and maybe even earn some cash in that is going to underdogfantasy.com. When you go there, new customers deposit and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash when they use code Rapport there in the system. So make sure you check in with our guys over there at Underdog. We will have our Underdog breakdown in the pregame for that. We will be having that pregame coming up here on the War Report channel. So make sure you guys are locked in. And once again, if you want to put a little money on the game, head over to BetUS, use code YouTube150, get 50% match on your first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposits at betus.com. When we look at performers for this game, again, Auburn needs some guys to step up and do better. Miles Kelly did not have a good shooting game versus Texas A&M. That's one of the things that I harped on. If the way that Texas A&M plays defensively, you need to be able to knock down threes in order to threaten them, right? And Miles Kelly had a bad shooting performance from 2 and 3 in that game. Only was able to make one shot in that game, but he had some open looks, some good opportunities. He needs to be able to bounce back and play a good game, I think, for Auburn to be able to do what they need to do in this game versus Bama. And in addition to that, I think that you're going to need to continue to see what you've been seeing from Chad Baker-Mazar from a scoring perspective. A few less turnovers, though, in this game. He had some kind of puzzling turnovers in that Texas A&M game. So he's got to get those turnovers lower, especially if he's going to have the ball in his hands as much as he did versus Texas A&M as a backup point guard. The turnovers have to get lower because the turnovers that he had were just like they were just weird passes. It's like, what were we doing in that? What were you thinking in that? And the avoidable turnovers for him, like ones that are forced by the defense, okay, but the avoidable ones, he's got to get those eliminated if he's going to be a guy that they're going to put the ball in his hands consistently. That assist to turnover ratio needs to be good for him. From the other side of this, Bama did not shoot the three very well inside of Coleman Coliseum. But when you look at the numbers for them on the season, they actually, just like Auburn, are shooting the ball better on the road than they are at home. So that doesn't actually bode well for Auburn in this game. Auburn has shot the ball worse at home of late. Now, they had a great road contest where they shot the ball well versus Kentucky. They did okay in their Ole Miss matchup, but they had not been shooting. Let's go back and look at the numbers of that. In that Ole Miss game, Auburn was able to knock down 11 threes, right? And so they were able to break some out of that home shooting slump. But then they go on the road versus Texas A&M. They knocked down 9 threes in that game. That was decent, right? They on the road versus Kentucky, they had 12 threes in that game. So they are shooting the three ball better right now. Even with a poor game from Miles Kelly, 9 threes, a lot of that from Tahad Pettiford in the game versus Texas A&M. They're going to need to shoot the three well in this game, but they only won that game in Tuscaloosa by 9 points, and Bama only made 5 threes in that game. That's one thing that Bama, even in this six, the losing 4 of their last 6 games, they've shot the three ball much better since that Auburn game for Alabama. They have shot 13, 11, 22, which is ridiculous, versus Mississippi State, 9 and 9. So they've had at least 9 threes made in every game since the only 5 that they made versus Auburn. If they make 9 threes in that Auburn game, very different game that happens there. Again, with Auburn only winning by 9, if they make an additional 4 threes and, they win that game in theory, right? Like it doesn't exactly play out that way, but still you have a different kind of ball game if they're making those threes. Particularly Mark Sears shooting the ball a lot better now since he only had the 2 threes in that Auburn game. So a different kind of offensive kind of juggernaut. They're back to themselves, I guess you could say. And the question is whether or not they shot the ball poorly because of the defensive strategy of Auburn and the way that those guards bother them. Again, we don't know what the status of Denver Jones is going to be. A taller guard, maybe bothering Mark Sears a little bit more. The pressure they were able to put on all of the guards that came in for Alabama with their height and length bothering them. Are they going to be able to do that same thing in this game, especially if Denver Jones isn't in there? Or has Bama found something? Those are the questions that you have to ask. Was it the Auburn defense forcing tough looks and getting them out of their rhythm? Or has Bama found their rhythm again? And now Auburn has to find a way to outscore Bama, which, again, the teams that have beat them recently, that's exactly what they did, right? You're talking about Missouri scoring 110, but Bama scored 98 in that game. The loss versus Tennessee wasn't an outscoring. That was definitely a defensive matchup because both teams were in the 70s. But then when you look at the Florida game, 99-94, both teams in the 90s in that game. I didn't feel good about Auburn in a shootout in the first game. I don't feel good about Auburn in a shootout in this game, even though in that first game, Auburn scored 94. Bama scored 85, though, still. So still in the 80s in that one. I think that it has to start on the defensive end for Auburn, being able to keep Bama in the low 80s, high 70s in this game, and Auburn getting into the mid to high 80s in order for them to win this game. I don't like a 90s matchup or a high 80s matchup, Auburn winning in that. Even though Auburn is an offensive juggernaut of their own, when you get into that kind of matchup, I think that you're starting to play into the hands of Bama a little bit too much. I want to see Auburn win more of a defensive game in this one than they did in the first one. But again, a lot of that's going to start with whether or not Denver Jones is going to be able to play in this game. The other portion of this is a thing that we always bring up with these Auburn teams or in these Auburn previews is the free throw line. Bama gets to the free throw line a lot. They do it even better on the road. They get road whistles really well. They go to the free throw line a lot on the road. They are one of the best in the conference at being able to get to the free throw line. In fact, when you look at this Bama team away from home, their free throw rate is 39.5%. That's the second best free throw rate of any team in the conference, second only to Texas A&M, who Auburn just played. So and they offensive rebound the best in the country. So you're basically playing Texas A&M again in this game from the standpoint of they're going to get to the offensive boards. They're going to get to the free throw line. Can you do a better job in this game of securing the offensive glass? You don't have to beat them at the offensive glass, but you can't give up 20 plus offensive rebounds in this game. You need to get that offensive rebounding rate much lower for them in this game. And you need to do a better job on the offensive glass yourself. Now, Auburn, from a physicality standpoint in the paint, does have a bit more of an advantage than they do versus Texas A&M. But again, this is something that Bama's done really well on the road. So this game's going to look different than it did inside of Coleman Coliseum if the averages hold true, right? They're going to shoot the ball better, they're going to offensive rebound better, and they're going to get to the free throw line at a higher rate than they did even at home. So Auburn's going to have to do a much better job in this game defensively of getting to the defensive glass, defending without fouling, hoping their guys don't get into foul trouble, and making sure that they run them off of the three-point line just like they did in Tuscaloosa. So looking forward to this game. I think it's a great matchup. It's one, again, Auburn, listen, you can be mad at me for saying this. I know, bug, blah, 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 whatever. Auburn's the better team in this matchup, should win this game. Because they are shooting the ball better right now than they had previously, despite what it looked like in that Texas A&M. They actually shot the ball decently in that game. It's just a couple people who had off games. Janai Broom, Miles Kelly specifically in that one offensively didn't play great, and the offensive glass was the trouble. So can they do better on the boards, and can they continue to shoot the ball well at good percentages to be able to put themselves in a position to be there at the end of this game and get the sweep again, third SEC sweep of the season for Auburn? Can they do it? And they have the opportunity to tie the best record that they've ever had as an Auburn basketball team in a season. So a lot of stuff on the line there for Auburn. I don't think that they are trying to do anything to sleepwalk their way into the SEC tournament. You want to be clicking on all cylinders at this point in time. Now, whether you win the tournament, that's neither here nor there, but you don't want to do too much here to put yourself in a position where you're feeling rusty going into the NCAA tournament. So hopefully Denver Jones is going to be able to give you some quality minutes. You'll get some good minutes again from Tahai Pettiford, better point guard minutes from Chad Baker-Mazar. Even though he played well, he could play better there. And then I think you get Janai Broome back into the mix as a double-digit scorer in this game, and Miles Kelly shooting the ball better. All of that is a gumbo for what I think can be an Auburn win in this one. But I want to hear from you all. What do you think will happen in this game? Give me your thoughts. Give me your score predictions. All of those things right down there in the comment section. Again, thank you to everybody who's watching this. Share the content before you get out of here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll have our watch party going down for this game tomorrow. Or if you're watching this on the same day, then it's going to be later on today. And we will have all of our post-game reactions right here. So make sure you guys are tapped in with us. You've been watching the Lobtown, brought to you by BetUS. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.